we're going to cover the Dvadasamsa, the 12th Varga. 12th Varga is a very important Varga. You'll see lots of sutras in the old text where they tell you to check something in the Navamsa and the Dvadasamsa. It's referred to probably second most out of all the Vargas. It's extensively used in Prajna as well. It's a very important Varga. Now, Parashara simply says that we look at parents from the Samsha. But the Dasamsa is much, much more than that. It's not just looking at our parents to see how they are in our lives. What it actually is, it's a chart that indicates the effects of our ancestors upon our life. So we have our parents, and the actions that our parents take in life will affect us, obviously, right? But also the actions of our grandparents will affect us. And our great-grandparents, and our great-great-grandparents, and our great-great-grandparents, all the way back to seven ancestors back. The karmas of those people, the things those people do in their lives, actually affects their succeeding generations. So the Dvadasamsa is actually a chart where we see the results of the karmas that are manifest in your life as a result of your ancestral background. Now, we have a karmic debt to our ancestors. It sounds really unfair that, my ancestors might have done something and now I have to bear the burdens of it. Well, it doesn't work that way. Children are a debt that we have to, let me say this right. We have to pay a debt to our children. We owe those people something, which is why we have to raise them. Okay? But at the same time, the child owes the parent a debt for being raised. So, we had our ancestors who, say our great-great-great-grandfather, and he went through the turmoil of raising his children, put all that work and sweat into them. And because he did that, you were born down the road. So you see, we owe our ancestors a karmic burden, and just like they owe their children a karmic burden, because we are all in this together. We're all raising and creating offspring together, one generation after the other. And so we owe our previous generation for the things they've done for us. But at the same time, the parents owe the children an obligation, which is why they have that particular child. Okay? So ancestral debts are just something that naturally occurs. It's a fair thing. We have to pay some of our ancestral debts to thank our ancestors for creating us. And we come into their lives, we come into our parents' lives, specifically us, rather than just some arbitrary child, because our parent owes us a particular debt and is paying that debt by raising us. And our grandparents owed a particular debt to their children, and they pay that debt by raising that particular child. But then, generally speaking, the child owes a debt to his forefathers and forefathers for, creating them in the first place, for having progeny and taking care of them. So we're linked to our ancestors karmically. And the Dvadasamsa, simply put, shows the karmas that come through our ancestors, our ancestral karma that impacts our life now. So we had really noble ancestors who did great things. We're going to have things be better in our lives. We'll have a better Dvadasamsa, and better things will happen in our lives as a result of that. If we had ancestors who, were horrid creatures, who are raping and pillaging and robbing banks, then our Dvadasamsa is going to be bad. And as a result, we're going to suffer the karmas of those ancestors. Why? Because we owe them a debt for them creating us in the first place. Because at least they did that, right? For us, even if they did nothing else for us. So ancestral karma is something we don't think of so often in the West, but which is considered very, very important in Eastern cultures. And of course, everyone knows in Japan and China, they actually revere and worship their ancestors and regularly pray to their ancestors. In India, which has a much, much more colorful religion, that's not done as much, but ancestors and departed ancestors are respected. They are still prayed to. We call them the Pitrus, the departed ancestors. So the ancestors are a big part of our lives. And it's the Dvadasamsa that we use to determine the effects our ancestors have upon our life. And that means that the Dvadasamsa you need to look at for everything. It encompasses everything. In fact, there's a good story in B.V. Raman's autobiography, which was called My Experiences as an Astrologer, where he was on a train and he just happened to be sitting next to someone who knew astrology. So they started talking astrology, and they discussed a particular chart. I think it was a chart the person had that B.V. Raman met. And the guy asked him how many kids if this person would have children. And B.V. Raman said, no, this person won't have children. And the guy said, actually, this person does have children because of this thing going on in the Dvadasamsa. And B.V. Raman's like, the Dvadasamsa? Why bother with that? And the guy replied to him, he says, he goes, the Dvadasamsa is important. Study Brihat Parashara and you'll understand. Well, the funny thing is, nowhere in Brihat Parashara does it say anything, at least in the copy we have, does it say anything relating children to the Dvadasamsa. I don't know why that guy told B.V. Raman that. Maybe he had a different version of Brihat Parashara that had some reference to the Dvadasamsa and children. I really don't know. The only remote thing to it, well, no, that's not even related to children. There's just nothing like that. However, the point he was making, the good point is that you need to look up the Dvadasamsa for everything. It's in everything Varga. And other classical texts do hint to that, to look at everything as modified by the Dvadasamsa. In fact, there's one book, it's Uttara Kalamrita, that tells us to read the Swamsha from the Rashi, the Navamsha, and the Dvadasamsa. Okay, so he uses Gemini Swamsha, the Makaraka planet. He says to read that in the Rashi chart, the Navamsha, and the Dvadasamsa chart. Okay? And some texts call the Dvadasamsa simply Amsha, the Varga. Usually that term is reserved for the Navamsha, but some texts use that term for the Dvadasamsa as well. So the Dvadasamsa definitely is a Varga that takes pride of place. And it really makes sense for it to do so because there's 12 signs in the zodiac. The Dvadasamsa is when we take each sign and cut it into 12 parts ruled by all the other signs. So it makes sense that in a division that has within it one of each sign would be important. Okay, just logically anyone would assume that. So the Dvadasamsa is easy to calculate. We simply start at that sign and go 12 signs. For the first Dvadasamsa of Aries is Aries. The second part is Taurus. The third part is Gemini. Then Cancer. Then Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius. And the last Dvadasamsa of Aries is Pisces. Then the first Dvadasamsa of Taurus is Taurus. And then it goes Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, all the way around to the last Dvadasamsa is Aries. So real simple. Follows the same concept that we used in the Drekana, the Hora, and the Chatratamsha. One of the easiest Vargas to calculate. Each Varga, each Dvadasamsa is 2.5 degrees, okay, in width. Now, some of the interesting things that Yavana Jataka says about the Dvadasamsas. He says, in each sign there are Dvadasamsas which fill the sign with their own influences. So there's 12, Rashis inside each Rashi that fill their sign with their own influences. These are subtle modifications in respect to height or depth of action when their influences are combined with those of the terms, which is the dashas. So he's saying these Dvadasamsas influence the extents and heights or success of all actions, in the context of the Dasha Lords. So he's telling us to really pay attention to the Dvadasamsa of a planet. And also, when the Lord of the Dvadasamsa in the Ascendant is the strongest Lord, or is in a cardine, it establishes that the nature of the native is made of that sign to which the Dvadasamsa belongs. So he's saying if the Dvadasamsa Lagna sign is going to mark your personality, if that Lord of that Dvadasamsa is really strong, or if it's in an angle, then that Dvadasamsa is really going to mark your personality. So say a person has Libra in the Dvadasamsa. If Venus in the birth chart is on an angle from the ascendant, or if it's a strong planet in the chart, then this Libra Dvadasamsa will really affect their personality. Okay? So these two sutras just kind of focus on the Dvadasamsa having a very strong influence that's similar in nature to the Rashi chart, but which when strong can dominate what we see in the Rashi chart. Okay? So really simple. We need to look at it to see the parental influences in the context of how did our parents raise us? How was life living with our parents? That's one thing we want to look at the Dvadasamsa for. But I also want to judge every bhava to see how the ancestral karma in our lives is impacting those areas. So if the second house in the Dvadasamsa is in really good shape, then the ancestral karma from our ancestors is going to be of greater benefit. And we'll have more wealth as a result, more good second house things. Okay? Alright, then we have the Dvadasamsa deities. Ganesha. I'll write these down. Ganesha, the Ashwins. Then Yama. And the last one is Haya. Parashar simply says Haya. And Hayagriva is how it's usually said. Is the full name of that deity. Parashar simply says Haya. So these are the four deities of the Dvadasamsas. Now there's 12 Dvadasamsas, but only 4 deities, because we go through them 3 times. So the first Dvadasamsa is ruled by Ganesha, the second by the Ashwins, the third by Yama, the fourth by Haya. Then the fifth is ruled by Ganesha, the sixth by Ashwins, the seventh by Yama, the eighth by Haya. Then the ninth is also ruled by Ganesha, the 10th also by the Ashwins, the 11th also by Yama, and the 12th also by Hayagriva. Now what's interesting about this, it takes 2.5 degrees for each Dvadasamsa. So 2.5 plus 2.5 plus 2.5 plus 2.5 is 10. So the first 1/3 of a Rashi has within it all 3 of these Dvadasamsas, or all 4 of these deities. Then the second third has all 4 of those deities, and the last third, which means each Drekana has within it all 3 of these deities. Okay? Now we know the first Drekana is, what is it again? It's Gustya is the second one, Durvasa, Narada, that's right. And Narada, Gustya, and Durvasa are the 3 Drekana deities. So each of those Drekana deities has within it all 4 of these deities. And you can use that to your advantage knowing that. Because the planet is not like it's just in this Drekana, or it's just in this Navamsha, or just in this Dvadasamsa. A planet is at, say, 6 degrees of Aries, which means it's in Aries in the Rashi, it's in Narada Drekana, it is in, it's in Manusha Navamsha, it is in Yama Dvadasamsa. And that's what's really happening to the planet, all those things together. After we finish up this Dvadasamsa Varga class, we're going to have a course on sort of using all the Vargas together. Right now we're going through them in an isolated way. But keep in mind, nothing's ever happened in an isolated way. When you're looking at Mars at 6 Aries, you're looking at Mars and all those Vargas and with different deities and so on. But for now, you can start thinking over the fact that each Dracana is ruled by Narada, Augusta, or Dvadasamsa, and each of those has one of these 4 Dvadasamsa deities. Okay? And that's sort of an easy chart to use. And Dvadasamsa and Dracana are 2 of the most prominently used Vargas. Especially in Prajna, those are both heavily used. And of course, Navamsha is always used. So anyway, these are our deities. Ganesha, Ashwins, Yama, and Haya. Ganesha is everyone's heard of. However, the way we hear about Ganesha is not really his complete picture. Ganesha is considered to be the remover of obstacles. He's not the remover of obstacles. He's the Lord and creator of obstacles. And he's also the Lord of beginnings. So, because he's the Lord of beginnings, we're meant to perpetuate him anytime we do anything new. Anytime we begin something, we should say a prayer to Ganesha. If we don't say that prayer, Ganesha throws obstacles into your path. So he's not the remover of obstacles. He puts the obstacles there if you don't worship him, if you don't pray to him when you begin something. And that's a subtle difference. Okay? So he's the Lord of obstacles. So you got to pray for him so he doesn't put them in your path. Okay? He's the Lord of beginnings. So anytime we begin something new, we need to do something. We need to perpetuate or pray to Ganesha. Anytime we do anything new, there's bound to be obstacles, right? Anything new requires us to get our feet wet on new things, and those things come as obstacles. So by being the Lord of beginnings, of course, he's going to be the one that's going to create obstacles for you too, right? So we need to perpetuate them to get off to a smooth start and to not have obstacles in our path. But Ganesha is all about new things and beginnings. And because of that, he rules the first Dvadasamsa. Okay, he's the first of these 4. Makes sense, right? Because he rules beginnings. Now, on a deeper level, what Ganesha represents is the Om, the sound of Om. The Om vibration is symbolized by Ganesha. In fact, in Telugu, if you look at how they write Om, and then you write Om letters in Telugu, it's the profile of an elephant. Okay, interesting. Why does Ganesha have an elephant head? Because elephants have the unique ability to communicate with each other with super low vibration sounds. And they can communicate to each other over 20 miles away with a super low frequency sound. Now, low frequency sound travels long distances. It travels through solids. High frequency sounds easily get soaked up by solids and get bounced around, but the low frequency sounds just keep going. So these elephants have this super low frequency sound that they communicate with, which humans can't even hear. Just like the Om vibration. A super low frequency sound beyond the hearing of earthly ears, and a sound that we only can hear with our astral ears. So if you pray or meditate and you hear the Om bubbling up in your chakras, you're hearing that as an astral sound. Okay, and that's some goal of meditations is to hear that Om sound within oneself and then merge one's consciousness with it. Now, the Om sound is that primordial vibration, the Word of God as it is called in the Christian literature. That is the vibratory essence or creator of everything that happens. It's that cosmic vibration that creates everything. So underneath everything, what begins everything, the first thing that starts is the Word of God, the Om vibration. And that's what Ganesha represents. So he very much represents these beginnings. Okay? This initial beginning energy, which is a God-given energy. Okay? Meaning, it's the Om vibration. It's the Word of God. And that's what spurs creation on. That's what spurs progeny on. when God showed up, he said, all right, guys, he made a few rishis. He said, all right, time to procreate. God initiated our ancestral path, okay, that we came from. And he did it through this Om vibration, which is symbolized by Ganesha, okay? The Ganesha Dvadasamsa represents important beginnings that are founded upon past deeds and the creative power of the ancestors to bring something new into our lives. So planets in the Ganesha Dvadasamsa indicate new things into our lives that are brought about through the creative powers and the karmas of our ancestors. If the planet's in good Lajitadiya Bhashta, it's a desirable new thing. If the planet's in a bad Lajitadiya Bhashta, it's a new thing that's only going to cause us unhappiness. Okay? So this is sort of that initiating Dvadasamsa. Has all the creative power of the Om vibration behind it. The 2nd, 6th, and 10th Dvadasamsas are ruled by the Ashwins. Now the Ashwins are the divine horsemen that are the son of Surya and of Suranya, the goddess of the clouds and the daughter of Vishwakarma. Now Vishwakarma is the divine architect which has built this world that we stand upon. Okay? Now the Ashwins, as most people, are twins. And as most people know, they're the deities of healing and medicine. What's important is the names of these individual twins. One is called Nasatya, which means helpful, and the other is Dashra, which means giving wonderful aid. So the Ashwins are the two helpers that give wonderful aid. And of course, that is most strongly found in medical help, in health for bodily ills. And that's why they're the deities of healing. But they're really the deities of giving aid and help and assistance in wonderful ways. Okay, like if you go to a great healer, you've been sick and they heal you, it's like a miracle, right? But any type of help to help us keep on going, any kind of aid that's remarkable, that really makes a difference in our life, that all comes from the Ashwins. Okay? The Ashwin Dvadasamsa provides the needed things that allow for something to be maintained and enjoyed. So planets in the Ashwin's Dvadasamsas give us things that help us or are capable of maintaining those things. They represent things that we are able to somehow maintain, even remarkably. Even things that maybe we think aren't going to last, somehow they do. And we keep enjoying them and keep benefiting from them, if they are in a good Lajitadiya Bhashta. In a bad Lajitadiya Bhashta, the planet can have so many issues with it, there's no miracle that can fix it. Okay? And no matter how much you try to get help, you won't get help that works if it's not there. In which case, you're not getting the blessings of the Ashwins to help that thing in a remarkable way. So while the Ganesha Dvadasamsa is more about new beginnings and new things, the Ashwins is the ancestral karma that helps us maintain and enjoy the things that we do have. Okay? Then the 3rd, 7th, and 11th Dvadasamsas are the Yama Dvadasamsas. We also had a Yama Dasamsa. Okay? Again, Yama is the firstborn of man, who along with his twin were born from the sun. Yama is the god of death. He leads the disembodied souls to whatever astral plane they've merited. Yama is the god of death for the simple reason that he's the first man to die. So Yama was a man, just like us. Probably a lot smarter than us, though. He died, went to wherever he went, and at that point became the Lord of Death, just through precedence of being the first person to have died. He got that honor. Okay? The Yama means to reign, or it means a bridle or reign, and refers to ideas of control and restraint. So, this Dvadasamsa gives the power to control things, restrain things, and to destroy things and let go of things that aren't necessary anymore. Okay, so some things need to be let go of. Some things need to be allowed to pass, to let the Lord of Death have them. This Dvadasamsa gives that ability to let things go graciously, knowing that letting go of those things will result in something better overall. Of course, if the planet's afflicted in this Dvadasamsa, then we'll either hang on to things or experience a lot of pain when we were parted from things. And also, the planets that fall in the Yama Dvadasamsa are things that we have to exert more discipline, control over in order to manifest and make those things continue to work for us. Okay? But in some regards, this Dvadasamsa, the Yama Dvadasamsa, has more of the death aspects of Yama, meaning things that are in the phase of letting go, no longer completely necessary, and hopefully in a healthy way. Because Yama, another name of Yama is Dhammaraj, the king of Dharma. Why? Because he's perfected Dharma. So an aspect of Yama is knowing that in doing our duty, there's no fear of death. If we fulfill our Dharma, there's no fear of death, and we're ready to move on to the next thing. So planets in this Dvadasamsa, if they're in good Logitati Avastas, are planets that we've done the right thing with. We've fulfilled our Dharma with them, and so we're able to healthily move on and beyond those planets. If they're in bad Logitati Avastas, we have a hard time moving on because we haven't fulfilled our Dharma in respect to that thing. One way you can look at it, do you ever notice the most miserable people are the people who cling strongest to life? You know what I mean? Whereas the people who are really happy all the time, they're not completely scared of death. The people who really fear dying, who cling to life, generally don't really have a great life. They don't find a lot of happiness in their life. And so you wonder why they cling to it. It's almost like this anomaly. You think you have a miserable life, you just can't wait to get out of here. But those people are actually the people that cling to life the most desperately. So that could be indicated by a planet in a bad Yama Dvadasamsa. Because we don't feel like we've done what we're meant to, aka a bad life, we're not able to move beyond things as we're required to. And also this Dvadasamsa, like I said, can represent difficulties that we have to discipline and control, but which we're able to do and therefore find success with if the planet's in a good Logitati Avasta. Okay? The last Dvadasamsa, the 4th, 8th, and 12th Dvadasamsas are ruled by Hayagriva. Now, Hayagriva is the horse-headed avatar of Vishnu, or incarnation of Vishnu. And he symbolizes wisdom and knowledge. He's a deity of knowledge and wisdom. But he's a horse. Anytime you see a horse, that symbolizes power. So you go, why does the deity of wisdom and knowledge have a head of a horse? Well, it's the head and not the body, because we're talking about things of the head, which is knowledge and wisdom. A horse's body represents physical power. But the head represents intelligence. So here we're saying the power. Horse symbolizes power. So a horse body symbolizes a powerful body. A horse's heart symbolizes the power of leadership. A horse's head represents the power of knowledge and wisdom. And that's what this deity represents. Haya represents the power of knowledge, which, guided by Vishnu, overcomes all demonic and dark forces, and thus gives peace and prosperity. So knowledge and wisdom has the power to overcome all negativities and give us a sense of peace and prosperity. The Haya Dvadasamsa gives the fulfillment that comes from knowledge and understanding, and the knowledge that allows one to overcome any and all difficulties. Ultimately, this Dvadasamsa gives the knowledge and understanding obtained even after all else is left behind. Because in the end, what are we left with? Knowledge and wisdom. Okay? We learn from our ancestors. It's in our DNA. Okay? If our ancestors did certain things, we have a DNA recollection of those things, and we'll do better with those things. And we can call those talents. Okay? Hereditary talents. Oh, my grandfather was a great painter, so I'm a great painter. We see this happen sometimes. Why? Because when one person learns something, they pass that on genetically to their latter day ancestors. Okay? So it gives that knowledge and understanding. So planets that are in the higher Dvadasamsa, in good Lajitadya Bhashtas, are things we can get a good understanding about, find peace and prosperity as a result. And also, these are things that our ancestors understood and came to terms with. And thus, we ourselves are better able to come and understand them. It's kind of like those tests they'll do with a rat and a mouse in a maze. They'll see how long it takes a mouse to get through a maze. Say it takes 10 times before the mouse figures it out. Then that mouse has babies, and that mouse's babies do it in 5 times. Then that mouse's babies figures it out in like 2 or 3 times. And each generation of mice learns the same trick quicker. So this is the knowledge that our ancestors pass on to us. Okay? So again, all these things are ancestral karmas. Understanding, knowledge that helps us have prosperity. Of course, if the planet's in a bad Dvadasamsa, in a bad Lajitadya Bhashta, if it's afflicted, that indicates an area where your ancestors weren't able to understand, to have the knowledge to make things work. And so you don't have that learning in your DNA either. Okay? So look at this as a hereditary chart. The new beginnings you've inherited. Are they struggles because the planet's in bad Lajitadya Bhashtas? Or are they nice and harmonious things that really produce a lot because they are in a good Lajitadya Bhashta? Then the Ashwins are the hereditary, let's say, responsibilities. They're not new things, they're things that you take care of or which nicely get taken care of for you in the world. Because the Ashwins is also about helping and maintaining things. These are the things that you're maintaining that your ancestors also had, but now you're maintaining. The Ganesha things are not things your ancestors had. These might have been thoughts your ancestors had, hopes they had, which now in your lifetime, the karma for those things happen. Say, for instance, your traditional movie about the guy who grew up in the Bronx and he's the first kid to go to college. And his father wanted his kids and his grandfather wanted his kids, and it was an idea, and finally we got a kid who gets to go to college. That's an ancestral karma. It was a desire for 2 generations, and finally the Ganesha generation gets it. Okay, so Ganesha gives these something new in your life that the ancestors hoped for but never actually had. But you get it due to your ancestral karma. Stuff in the Ashwin Dvadasamshas are things that they had, which you're also taking care of. So you share a strong link with those things. The Yama Dvadasamsa are things that your ancestors were probably finishing, didn't find that important anymore, had made it the best of until they didn't need them anymore, and which you in this lifetime are probably going to be letting go of more in order to embrace other things. But there's still some karma residue there that you're the one that's going to finally pass that thing. So it started fizzling out of your ancestral karma, but you're the one who's finally going to let it out, let that thing die or let that thing go. So it's a completing ancestral karma that you live through the completion. Then the Haya Dvadasamsa are the ancestral knowledge and intelligence that comes through you, that capacity for understanding about something, which allows you to have prosperity and peace with whatever's there. You can look at that as a sense of mastery, okay? Like in the sense of having a lot of skill and intelligence, a sense of mastery. There's something your ancestors have mastered, and therefore you also have it in your DNA to master that thing. Again, that's if the plant's in a good Lajitadya Bhashta. If it's not, it's something that the knowledge is not right, because if your ancestors learned something wrong for 10 generations, in your DNA, it's going to be to learn that thing wrong too. And so you'll struggle with having learned that thing wrong and making mistakes with that thing. Okay? So all these things are problematic if they're in a bad Lajitadya Bhashta. In a Ganesha Dvadasamsa, planet in a bad Lajitadya Bhashta represents new things that you'd rather not have. They're just a pain and painful and destructive and don't work out, and basically non-productive new things. If it's in the Ashwin Dvadasamsa, it rules ancestral karmas of things that you need help with but can't get help with. So you suffer the decay of those things instead of their preservation. In the Yada Dvadasamsa, if those planets are in bad logic Tadyavashtas, it indicates painful and negative terminations and endings, and great frustrations and the inability to control things in a way that makes them productive. And the higher Griva, like I said, in a bad logic Tadyavashta indicates inherited knowledge and intelligences that aren't productive, that are simply wrong, not good, maybe they're good in one realm, but they're not good in the realm that you're operating. Okay? So this is a pretty simple Varga. It's simple to calculate. It only has 4 very clear and simple deities. Some very popular deities as well that most people have heard about. And it's a very powerful Varga because it has to do with all that ancestral karma, how it's impacting your life, of all your ancestors 7 generations back. So this is a pretty serious Varga. And we'll have a lot of fun as we continue with it. But that's enough for the first video, and we'll get going on a second video